Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Grid Talk. This month, we're going to be talking about process to playbook. And we wanted to focus on, why are organizations translating processes, procedures into playbooks? Really give you kind of a deep dive into the why and the problem that we're trying to solve with playbooks, but also give you some hints and tips on how you actually go about translating processes into playbooks. For those that don't know me, although I see quite a few familiar faces, I'm Pip Morpeth and I'm the Head of Professional Services for Method Grid. All right. For those that are new to Grid Talk, we run Grid Talk monthly, and it's a kind of knowledge sharing event because appreciate the kind of playbook concept is new. So we decided as a business that it would be good for us to kind of share best practice with clients, prospects, and industry as well on the approach. For those that don't know much about Method Grid, our purpose is to help improve how teams deliver projects and services. And we do that by sort of connecting knowledge, experience, and technology. And our vision is to build world-leading AI-empowered knowledge and project management platform. But that is underpinned by world-class professional services that help organizations do that. And we have some fantastic clients, mainly focused on architecture, engineering, and construction. And obviously, renewables energy is the latest with their SSE partnership. Whilst I've got your attention, what we thought, it's August next month, and August tends to be, it'll be low attendance. We all should be enjoying summer holidays or looking after the kids. So we thought we would just do, not a client event, we thought we'd just do one on the playbook investment. And I know a few of you on this call are sort of in that process at the moment about, oh, well, how do I kind of secure the investment for my kind of playbook project? So we thought we would run an event just focused on, look, here's the benefits framework that we use and how we help clients write their investment case. Here's the different options, implementation options, investment options that you have with it, but also give you kind of insight into some of the templates and really for us to try and help you with that process. So we just thought we'd run that in sort of mid-August as a kind of a prompt and a help and a useful resource for you going forward. I think we'll do more client events come kind of September and October, November, when we're back to work in reality after we get through summer. So for this Grid Talk, like I said, I want to focus on the, process to playbook, but why? What's the problem that I'm actually going to try and solve? And then talk you through that kind of process to playbook journey. I'm going to try and spend 20 minutes on each, and then like with all Grid Talks, it's talk, so it's please ask questions. So we'll keep time at the end for questions, but as we go through, please keep in mind kind of questions that you might want to ask at the end. Okay. Now normally I fly through this quite quickly. I might just spend a bit more time on this because it really kind of gets to the crux of the why playbook. And we call this the kind of shared problem because at Method Grid, this is the one problem that we are 100% focused trying to solve. And it's really, how do you reduce cost to poor quality that comes from inconsistent ways of doing things, either through services or projects that you deliver? I won't go through all the pain symptoms, but I think if you look at 1 to 8, they'll probably resonate with you. I've highlighted the ones in red that every client I speak to, they will always tell me, yeah, that's our business, which is, one, they recognize the way we do things is inconsistent. 2, teams find it really difficult. They don't know how, they can't find the process. They don't know who to speak to. They can't find the resources, didn't even know about the fact that resources existed. And that kind of leads to 6, which is teams are kind of reinventing the wheel, and ultimately 7, which is, I find it, I've been in this business 12 months, I still can't work out exactly how I get things done. So it kind of creates quite a difficult onboarding experience for before people feel confident that they know how you kind of want to work and your ways of working. The sort of why so, and our focus is on these kind of 4 key points, which is fundamentally you have to give people clarity on what the process is that they want to follow, and that can be, you know, a mixture between, look, we've written 15 slides and we think that's good enough, or, you know, we've built this massive full-blown SharePoint, it's got everything in it, but yeah, it's difficult and awkward for people to find the information they need. 2 is the compliance problem, and we flagged that one red, and I think anyone I speak to is, they all struggle with, look, I couldn't tell you with confidence that people are following the process, they're doing it correctly, they've tailored it. I've got no view of actually, you know, people are compliant to the way of working. 3 is about people, which, you know, we kind of have to look at it and say, well, you know, we want them to work in a specific way. What have we put in place to allow them to be successful in that? I.e., have we given them training? Is there learning assets that they can use to help build their confidence, so that they can actually, you know, give that process a go and follow it? Or if it's not there, tend to happen is they'll just default to what they know, or more reality is default to what they feel comfortable in doing. And then 4 is the kind of residual risk question, which is, you know, you work in projects, you work in kind of high complex processes, there will always be audit and assurance on those processes, just as kind of a natural part of the 3 lines of defense a company will put in place. But I think the frustration will be for people is, you know, I don't know what the standards are, I didn't know I needed to provide this information, I didn't know what evidence was required. And then even for the people that are doing audit and assurance, the kind of frustration is that they spend half their time trawling through trying to find the assets and information they need in order to do the reviews. And if there are actions, it kind of just gets thrown over as a spreadsheet to the team and say, here you go, get that fixed. So that's the kind of the why so. But for this session, there's a few concepts that we wanted to introduce you to. And if you follow us on LinkedIn, and please, if you don't, please follow us. There's a few articles that we pushed out, and really what we wanted to use this session was to kind of bring all of that together and explain kind of our thinking. And the first sort of new concept is what we call organizational drift, and this is the compliance problem. And it's quite simple. I'll build this up in a couple of slides, which is, you know, you have this kind of, oh, well, this is how we do stuff around here. Right over to the other side, well, we've written it down, job done. And it's in a company, you have this kind of level that you've said, well, look, this is kind of work imagined. This is how I think people are doing it. Or I've written this process down. That is the set standard that we want people to meet. And it's kind of like, well, I've written the process down, they should be following it. So that's kind of work imagined, prescribed there. In reality, what happens when you kind of apply quality and time and factor that into kind of work imagined, prescribed, what happens is there's a clear disparity between work as imagined, prescribed versus work as done. And, you know, you can just, as you try and see that graph there, it's kind of, as you execute the process and you follow it through time, people are compliant with it, but then people will drift. You know, we won't follow that process consistently, we won't do it, I didn't do X, I didn't do Y, and therefore a larger drift happens between how you imagine work is done versus how it's actually done in reality. The problem with that is, well, as people start to drift away from your way of operating, you start to build up things that go wrong, and they start to accumulate. Now, it might not be, you know, in a simple process, it might be, oh yeah, I didn't fill in that form, I didn't do X, Y, and Z. Fine, you know, it didn't create a critical failure. It gets more difficult when you have a number of processes and a number of teams that have to be orchestrated in order to achieve an outcome. And that's where the kind of build up and accumulation of hazards, eventually what we call as a kind of crossover between work is done and accumulations, which creates this sort of critical failure event. Now, it can either be, you know, oh, it's a massive impact to our schedule, it's a massive impact on the fact we haven't got deliverables that we need to have in place, therefore it's a kind of cost and schedule impact problem, or more fundamentally, it can be that someone doesn't go home safely. That's something we've done. We haven't followed a process and policy, and it's resulted in a critical safety event or a hazard. So that's the kind of reality. And what organizations are always trying to do is this: you'll find this level, the kind of critical to quality level. And what you're trying to do is the next slide, which is I think we all kind of feel it on a daily basis, is you're constantly managing drift. You know, you're trying to get teams to be more consistent, meet standards, meets the way of working, but fundamentally you're making sure that we don't create a critical failure in the organization. The other bit, which is at the top, which is this kind of innovation bit, is, well, at some point, you know, teams are going to find a better way of doing something. You know, they'll look at the process and go, oh, well, we tried this and we did this and it worked out better. And we think we can make this process better. And the phrase I came up with here is to describe it is, well, we want that innovation to apply itself and actually raise the bar of how work is imagined and prescribed. I think in reality, what we call it is flash innovation. One team did it, happened once, didn't land, we didn't capture it, we didn't even know about it, and it just disappeared, and actually work as imagined, prescribed, that level just stayed the same. But that is the kind of concept of organizational drift, and this probably explains the kind of compliance problem. Is, yeah, I've written the process down, it's in, you know, loads of standards, loads of documents, but actually people find it difficult to follow, and therefore as a leadership team or as a sort of management layer, I am constantly worried about the phone call that I'm going to get that something's gone wrong. But essentially my job is to try and get drift under control and reduced so that that we operate at an acceptable level. Cool. And then the next problem, and it's kind of we call it kind of the cognitive load, kind of been lost at sea, which is, well, I've written the process down, why aren't people following it? And I think you know, the reality of what we sort of help people with currently is their job is to navigate, you know, I don't know, 50 policies, procedures, standards, you know, 100 templates, 50 checklists, you know, all held in different systems. Oh, you need the finance SharePoint for this, you need this SharePoint for that, or, oh no, you don't use that system, it's held in this system and you need to use this document. And the reality is people are trying to build this kind of cognitive memory of how everything joins up to help them actually try and orchestrate successfully the kind of left to right of how we actually perform that process. And some of it can be, oh, well, look, I can't remember, it's in emails, so I need to go back to that email and find it. Or, you know, we just had a chat and we think this is a better way of doing it because I didn't know about the fact that these resources ever existed. And the kind of cloud resents, this is what I know, and it's on me to learn all of that. But also, you know, there's stuff outside what I know that I just do not have sight of. And, you know, the reality of sort of most sort of clients in this world, the kind of process, massive policies and SharePoint world, is, yes, there may be clarity if you read the document, but essentially what you're left with is a kind of web of death. I just get lost in it. You know, good luck for me being successful and trying to navigate that. I think one of our clients was at WWA, Ward Williams. You know, they expressed this problem to us. They said, look, it's what we want to build is a kind of a compass that helps people navigate complex processes. So much so they kind of like Compass. It's the name of the method grid platform within WW. But essentially, it is about helping people navigate complicated processes, and that's a kind of sort of the introduction of the playbook approach. And I think this other one is sort of when you imagine kind of work is done, don't view it as a single line. I think what you have to view it is the fact that multiple people, multiple teams are going through that in your organization at any one time, and it is creating significant amounts of drift. One person's doing it correctly, one person isn't, or one team are working in this way, the other work in a completely different way. And that's really what we're trying to help organizations do with the concept of playbook, is give you a control for reducing drift and helping teams sort of be more consistent. And that's the kind of sort of leadership challenges. Look, what can you do to help people be more successful and help them navigate what is already quite a stressful environment, but helping them navigate that successfully. Now, the next concept we introduced is the shelfware trap, and my colleague Dom put an article out on LinkedIn. I think it's on our website as well. It's a good read. What I wanted to do with this is just really explain the impacts the shelfware trap can actually have on your organization. So I've kind of tried to explain it in a loop, and the first loop is, okay, well, we've written the processes down, we've got clarity. It's a bit of a web of death, but it's in delivery, and what we recognize is, there's quite a bit of drift. We still have a drift problem, that people aren't following that process consistently. And you might go through a couple of loops where, oh, well, maybe we'll go back. We need to make the SharePoint site better. Maybe we need to update the process. We'll push it out and publicize it more and more. And you go through that kind of loop a couple of times. The kind of next conversation is, oh, well, clearly first line isn't working so well. So actually what this is actually a kind of assurance control problem. So what we need is more kind of checklists, controls, for kind of second line, third line of defense. And they're right. I think any process we engineer or any playbook we build, we kind of always want to kind of merge, or what is the kind of minimum standard sort of controls that we need to put in place that builds that confidence that it's been followed and used. The problem, though, what we find is, because there is the sort of disconnect between process and delivery, like that should be the first line, is what happens is your second line and third line become overcompensated, and you will find that you have got a checklist for this and a checklist for that, and then you've got independent reviews for X, you've got multiple reviews throughout the process, and actually, if you're not, if this continues, because the first line people don't know the process, it's difficult for them to understand and difficult to follow. Therefore, your only sort of your default response is to build more checks and controls into the process. What you can end up with is you build an oil tanker, which is checklist heavy, multiple reviews and assurance, multiple approvals, to give you confidence that that process is working effectively and people are following it. And that oil tanker becomes difficult to change, very difficult to innovate, and more fundamentally probably impacts your ability and your speed to respond to change, because people are nervous by the fact that, well, we've written processes down, but actually they don't follow them when we want them to, and therefore we have to build this kind of control and check regime. And I think anyone that's worked in kind of the industry, I think they know which organizations are oil tankers versus which ones are more fleet of foot and more innovative. The next challenge is that kind of with the shelfware trap is, okay, well, it's kind of we want to innovate and we want to improve process, and we want teams to be vested in that and take ownership for it. I think the first point is, look, if there's a broken connection between the process and knowledge and the artifact and delivery, it's very difficult teams to be vested in to try and improve that, because they don't even know. First problem is that, well, I don't even know that it's written down. Oh, it is written down, great. But yeah, I'm okay, I haven't followed it. Or I don't see much value in this asset because I don't actually use it in delivery. So what we call that is the kind of broken feedback loop, the kind of disconnection. The other kind of challenge is when you get that innovation, you've got that bright idea there, that kind of green dot, that has to come out. It has to get into the process to be updated, and people then communicated that, look, this is a new way of working. But also then, it has to transcend and actually land in delivery so that people can catch it and actually use it. So it's quite in the kind of shelfware trap. It's quite difficult to innovate and drive improvement, because where you kind of capturing that innovation and that new process, you've got to then ensure that people are actually going to be able to catch it, use it, and follow it. There's also another challenge with the kind of innovation point, which is, well, at some point you might want to say, well, look, I want to take some of these checks and balances out. We've improved the process, but in a kind of environment where second line and third line are nervous by the fact that people don't follow process, they become quite rigid and say, well, actually, I don't really want to take that checklist away, because, you know, behavior and what I've noticed before is people don't follow process consistently. And that is really kind of where you end up with the kind of shelfware trap. It's not just the fact that, okay, people aren't reading a document that you've pushed out there that help them follow the process. It can fundamentally change the kind of the sort of control structure and infrastructure that your organization has by the very fact that the root cause is that people can't find the information they need when they need it. There's a disconnect between how process and knowledge is actually integrated with delivery. Okay, so just to summarize kind of these kind of key points, and hopefully kind of the articles we pushed out kind of make sense now, it's sort of how they all join up, which is processes, you know, the kind of process procedures, the way we write things down, fundamentally it ticks the first box, it provides clarity, and that's critical. But processes alone and kind of we just leave it into that kind of web of death, is what we'll find is you'll have low compliance and high drift. Now, low compliance, high drift will normally default, the kind of default response will be, we need to increase the kind of level of assurance and controls that we need to put in place, that we have confidence that that process has been followed. The challenge with that is that both low compliance, high drift, and the increase of controls normally ends up with an oil tanker, which is, it's very difficult to change. We don't catch innovation because people are a bit, you know, aren't happy that we're removing controls or finding new ways of working, but also it can significantly impact our speed to respond either to new ways of working or new opportunities. And that, for me, is probably how I best kind of describe the kind of shelfware trap that organizations can end up with. So then we come on to the kind of process to playbook. You know, and we've all seen, we've probably got lots of them in our organization. Some might not have, and then they might be building that, they might be on that journey. But essentially you will end up with, look, I think these are all the kind of activities and deliverables that we want in order to, about how we actually prosecute this process. And the kind of process to playbook concept is to say, well, okay, well, let's see if we can translate that process into a playbook that teams can actually use. They can access the knowledge, they can access all the templates, all their understanding about why it's important. We can integrate the kind of tasks, the kind of key controls that we want them to evidence as they go through that process. But that is the key concept, which is actually, I want you to be able to use this playbook as you execute the process, because I want you, A, to reduce drift. I want to ensure that you are not, you know, having to kind of navigate the web of death, that actually I'm trying to make your life much more easier for you to find the information you need when you need it. So that's the kind of the key concept, is how do I take the process and build it into a playbook that can be used by teams to kind of evidence compliance, but also help them kind of build their confidence in how you want to do things by giving them access to knowledge, integrating it with e-learning and training, so that it is actually quite a more powerful resource than just a kind of a SharePoint page or a kind of Word document. Oh, I should have engineered this slide. So what we the definition we use for a playbook is, look, what we're trying to do is build a collection of kind of strategies and methods that kind of guide individuals in how to handle particular situations. You know, yes, it'll outline best practice procedures and kind of the actions that we want, but that playbook is being built to engineer a specific outcome that we want. And, you know, and you'll build, like when we help organizations build playbooks, you'll build, you know, there's the kind of traditional ones. Oh, look, we need a program project delivery playbook. We might need different versions of that playbook, one for Reba, one for CIOB, or we're doing work with Network Rail, so we might want a PACE playbook. We want different playbooks to be engineered and built to help us solve different problems. And really what the playbook is trying to do is, well, look, take best practice, and there's a lot out there. Take your kind of enterprise knowledge and IP and actually integrate that into something that teams can actually use that help them and guide them through the process. But also very critically, this is the bit where probably the kind of static content doesn't help us, is allow that playbook to be tailored. And this is where everyone will say is, look, we can build methods, we can try and scenario every outcome, but there is a reality that when we have a conversation with a client, or when we talk about our specific project, it needs to be done in a different way. And rather than kind of, well, it's easy to ignore if it's just SharePoint and static documents, but actually give the teams the ability to tailor the playbook. We want them to own the problem or own the solution about how we solve that problem, and work out with either the client or the sponsors or the kind of key stakeholders for the project is, well, how best do we do this? What do we need to move around and adjust? There might be specific deliverables that they need. There might be additional controls. There might be additional stage gates, but you have to give the ability for people to be able to tailor playbooks so that they can be right-sized. And that I think is probably another challenge that static, when we try and write things down, we try and have to write down and answer every outcome. It's incredibly difficult to do that with static content. And so how we solve this problem, and those that know Method Grid know it well, which is, well, we recognize that actually keeping knowledge management and project management as separate technology things that you have to buy doesn't really help you solve this problem. So the kind of first thing we came up with is, well, let's make it easier to kind of merge both knowledge management, project and task management together, but come up with a concept that you can build your own playbook in the platform, rather than it be, you need technical experts to build it. It's very much, well, look, I need a playbook platform because I want to build a staff onboarding playbook, or I want to build a project delivery playbook, and I want to codify for my teams how we want to do things to help kind of minimize drift. The kind of second point is, and you kind of see it's very logical, if you take the kind of process map, it's kind of, these are the kind of stages that we go through, and these are the different swim lanes of responsibility. And naturally, I think even for teams that work in Agile or Waterfall, it doesn't really matter. You're always trying to plot through left to right in how you orchestrate a journey that you're going to go through. And hence, that's why we kind of came up with the grid structure that allows you to kind of construct playbooks using a grid-based structure of stages and themes. The third point was probably the critical bit, which is the drift problem. And what we recognized was great playbook, looks fantastic, it's got all the information, templates I need, but actually what I want is the ability to clone that playbook and give it to a project team and say, I want you now to go and tailor and right size that playbook for your project. And once you've done that, I'll have a look to make sure that we're happy with how you've done it. But that's the control that I want you to use, where you tick off progress, you upload the evidence, and for the kind of first time in using it, I have kind of a live view of that people are actually following the process and using it properly. And so my kind of assurance has gone from, oh, it's only at kind of stage gates and reviews where I catch the problem, to actually I have the ability to dive in on a daily basis and see how they are progressing and build my confidence that people are following the process from that. I think the other aspect of this kind of master and clone concept is that teams are actually using the playbook in delivery. And I think that is the critical point really to drive continuous improvement and innovation, which is you're helping teams be more consistent. And therefore, if you're more consistent, you will find more pain points and you'll be able to scale and identify changes that will have a bigger impact because you are getting more volume of consistency through that process. But also because teams know that they'll receive the playbook in delivery, well, it's more on them, and they're more vested in, well, this template's rubbish, or we've built this new one. Can we add this change? Can we make an adjustment to here? We built this deliverable for this client. Can we add it into our playbook? Can we add it into the master? And what we're trying to do with the kind of master and clone is really, with the playbook, try and facilitate continuous improvement, so that there isn't a disconnect between kind of knowledge and process and delivery, and that if delivery do find a way that there's a problem, or there's a better template, or there's a new deliverable we should introduce, then essentially that can get fed back into a master playbook so that the next clone would benefit. And it's kind of facilitating that continuous improvement loop. And it will start small. When you pilot a playbook and launch it with teams, it'll be, this is great. Can we change these tasks and controls, or we need an additional task for this, or this template could be better. We've improved it. Can we make a recommendation to improve? That'll start off small, but then it will start to get bigger and bigger, and teams will be like, oh, do you know what? Actually, we've delivered this project 10 times this year. Can we build a more tailored playbook specifically that has the requirements pre-written for us? Actually, this playbook or this type of project, we'd like to build a specific solution instance for it, just to help us be more consistent. And then the fourth point is, and this is the interesting point for us, naturally, because we're a tool used in delivery, you have to provide reporting and tracking and assurance. But what we're quite keen on, and it's really built around that continuous improvement loop, is, well, can we use machine learning and AI to identify kind of recommendations and nudges to people? And for those that kind of follow us, the kind of big research project at the moment is Project Leap, which is ingesting lessons learned. And I'm sure most clients will have a large spreadsheet or database of lessons learned that are easily ignored. What we're experimenting with R&D is to say, well, can the playbook push recommendations to people as they're following it, and say, by the way, I've noticed you're doing X. By the way, this has happened before. I think this is relevant to you. Do you want to take action? Or the other side of it is, well, I noticed that you've just moved this task from 10 days to 20 days. Could you tell me what's going on? What have you learned by it, so that we can learn through trying to identify lessons at trigger events? Or you've managed to do this process faster than anyone else. Could you tell me how you've done it? And use the playbook as a way of trying to capture trigger points for lesson capture as well. And this is the loop essentially that we explain. So the kind of process to playbook concept is, yes, you will translate your process and translate it into a playbook, into kind of a master template. Once you've done that, you can then clone the playbook and push it into delivery, so that teams get their own instance of that particular process, or that, to me, more commonly, it's more project. And that's what they can use to understand the process, assign tasks, responsibilities, tick things off, but also provide the kind of evidence that's needed, which is that kind of assurance bit, which is great. You've got stage gates, but also making sure that certain tasks might need evidence uploaded, so you kind of have to upload the evidence. But the reason we're doing that is to essentially reduce drift, but also ideally over time is build more confidence that the first line is a more effective line of defense. And if it is a more effective line of defense, and we build slowly, and it is a slow process because lines 2 and 3 and audit and assurance will be hesitant, that over time you can start to reduce the number of checklists and controls that you actually have in place, because first line is much more effective in evidencing and the confidence in delivery confidence. So that's the kind of core loop, and how we kind of solve organizational drift and the shelfware trap. There's also a kind of different sort of levels of playbook that you can engineer, which is, yes, organizations, and for those that haven't seen it, I don't know, Tom, if you want to put it in the chat, we will build knowledge-based playbooks. pure knowledge. I think Network Rails is the largest we've ever built and has the most number of views for playbooks, but that is kind of a knowledge-based playbook, and it's just holding information on process, procedures, policy, standards, but it is structured around the project lifecycle, but it's pure for knowledge and information. That challenge tends to be, look, I need to broadcast this playbook to 30,000-40,000 people that need to understand it. The other kind of and there is a natural evolution. Okay, we've got the knowledge now, but we want to build kind of a playbook that's used for assurance. I want a new control that I want to introduce to the business, which is the playbook, which is, it's taken that playbook, it's cloned for each project. It will track people are compliant with it. It will provide them the knowledge, information, resources that they need. But that is helping me build confidence that drift is at an acceptable level. I feel a bit more confident. I'm not dreading that phone call or that email that we've made a mistake again. And the other kind of more on the kind of evolution of playbooks is the delivery playbook, which is, yes, I've used it as an assurance tool, and for those last year we introduced schedule and the ability to sort of build schedules and view it. Is I'm actually using the playbook to actually deliver the project. And yes, whilst it's providing us the assurance, it's also providing me the timeline and schedule of all the activities required to deliver the project. There is a degree and limit of how much playbooks can work in that environment between, well, this is really complicated, we need to use P6 and Primavera for that. But essentially there is a role where playbooks actually, based on the level of risk of a project, you may say, actually, we don't need that level of control. And actually for medium, low risk projects, we can just use the playbook as the vehicle for how we are managing delivery. But the kind of assurance and delivery playbooks, they are essentially your tool to kind of reduce organizational drift, that people are more compliant with the processes and ways of working. I think most of you would probably have seen a playbook. I think if Tom puts the read-only one in for paste, anyone in the UK or the world can access that playbook, and it'll give you kind of a flavour of the feel of the information. But and we did this last year as well. Like, quality, look and feel matter, and what we're trying to help clients do is, okay, well, how do you translate that process into something that's easy to understand, easy to follow, but also, it represents the kind of brand of our company. The colors feel like our company colors. I'd say most playbooks, the kind of style we engineer is, look, there's always a guidance layer that sort of lives around the edge of the playbook, which is, look, this is what this playbook is about. This is what is important in this stage. So kind of just giving people clarity on stage guidance. You can build in your kind of stage gates, and then you will also kind of break your methodology down into different themes. And it'd be like, this is what program and project do, this is what QS do, this is what all the different functions that need to be integrated to help you successfully navigate left to right. That was a kind of outcome of doing this playbook build with teams, which is helping them just get clarity on, well, what are all the kind of deliverables and evidence that we need as we go through this process. And that's just helping the first line, different teams collaborate and improve and get an understanding of how they actually work together. Now, the kind of core building blocks, which kind of you'll have seen on that diagram, which is like guidance elements are really useful. So, look, what's a real common one is risk management is a theme. And yes, you can spell out what all the deliverables that you need to produce throughout the life cycle are for risk management, but you can give people more information in the guidance element. Say, well, look, this is what it's about, why it's important. This is kind of key lessons learnt. Recently, I think on Network Rails, client requirements and scope, we've launched the first e-learning course, so you can actually directly access e-learning from that element. So if you want to know more information about it, and you can't remember the course you did in the first 3 months of your joining, then essentially you can integrate e-learning and training resources into the playbook, and that can be added to any element, but normally we'd say advise it to be more guidance elements. Then you get into kind of deliverable elements. So look, this is the deliverable you need to produce, here's the templates, you've never done one before, or you want more information, here's the expert that you can speak to. And then activity elements you can also have in there, which is look, just, if there's a specific activity like a workshop that you need to structure and run, you can provide more clarity on that process. Recent one is kind of decision element, which is, if you're translating a process to Playbook, there may be kind of key decisions that you have to make in that process journey. And this kind of can then be used to kind of say, well, look, what is the kind of decision we need you to make? What's the evaluation criteria? Who has got decision rights or any delegated sort of levels of authority? And use the element if you're using it in delivery. So, well, look, what are the options you considered? What's the recommendation? And what's our plan to implement it? And you may then need to adjust the playbook to kind of reflect the decision you've made. And then the kind of everyone's used to it, which is the kind of stage gate control, which is, okay, well, what's the decision point? What's the objectives? What's the entry exit criteria for the gate? And what was the kind of gate decision outcome and evidence? And using these kind of 4 key building blocks will probably help you navigate and help you convert most processes into playbooks. Right, this is, I thought I'd put it in the notes for the kind of event, and it's the kind of the process hierarchy versus playbooks. And most organizations, yes, they'll start building kind of this kind of hierarchy of all their business processes. And I kind of wanted to just sort of spell out where I think playbooks play in this journey, which is naturally the kind of enterprise level, which is big like marketing, sales, business development, operations. There'll be big enterprise building blocks. And they'll then subdivide that into their kind of process groups. These are our kind of core processes. I think we did this with Network Rail, sort of give them a top level playbook, which is their different processes and standards. But this really, you're not asking people to do anything. You're just helping them understand this is how we have decomposed the different processes that we have in our business. And these are the supporting playbooks that you can actually use to access it. And potentially, like, these are the owners of this process. These are the owners of the playbooks that are supporting you in executing that process. A really good example is, you might build, a top level knowledge playbook, and there may be a procurement process, but there may be a number of different playbooks that we've engineered and built for procurement, which might factor in the different, if it's over 250 or if it's single source or if it's, large deal, there would be probably different playbooks that teams can access and use to help them navigate that process in a compliant way. The group, I think then you get into the kind of process group of activity and task level, and that tends to be where we are engineering kind of assurance and delivery playbooks. And that's where those type of playbooks play, because we're now saying, look, how can we translate that process to be used? And look, there's still a role for certain sort of checklists and tasks at this bottom level that you might link people to and refer to, because there are separate checklists and controls that still exist. But you can navigate to those work instructions or procedures directly from the playbook, rather than just leaving them lost at sea to kind of navigate the kind of web of death of SharePoint. There is another factor that I sort of added into this conversation, which is when you think of processes and process groups, what can also happen is that, when you think about trying to deliver an outcome, procurement project delivery is a really good example, which is, most projects will need to use procurement processes, and they'll also need to probably use finance processes, investment processes. And what you will find is that as we engineer playbooks, actually what we have to navigate is cross-boundary processes. In order for us to successfully deliver this outcome for this project, we have actually got to navigate through procurement, we've got to navigate through project, we've got to navigate through operational management or IT service management. And what playbooks are really good at is, if you've codified the lifecycle, is helping you get teams to think about the process boundaries and how you go across different functions to build a kind of integrated approach to how you deliver change. So there's, yes, you can build playbooks for specific processes, but also think about it as well. Do we build playbooks that help us navigate specific scenarios that guide people through how we successfully navigate those different processes? And then just conscious of time, finally I pushed this out a couple of weeks ago, which is the kind of runners, repeaters, and strangers. And this kind of sort of lean manufacturing. And what you have to think about here is, if I was to look at the types of processes that I run in my organization and the kind of level of risk they have, or which ones will create me a critical failure, which processes are really risky, you will have processes that are strangers, infrequent. We don't deal with it often, and when we do, we kind of have to think about how we design it from scratch. You also recognize that actually, we find processes, or there's types of projects that are repeaters. We do this 3 times a year. We deliver this type of solution to a client. This is our kind of core service proposition from a consulting firm. That's our service. This is how it works. Or this is how we do this project every year. And then you tend to then start to say, well, actually, could we build a more specialized kind of repeating playbook that is designed to handle that problem? And it's either, look, I've built a playbook for different delivery methods. Like repeaters tend to be, look, I've got a playbook for Reba, I've got a playbook if I'm working for Network Rail, or I've got a playbook that is aligned to a framework that we want to quickly adapt and reuse, right down into kind of the runner solution playbook, which is, well, I've just sold a piece of work. It's a implementation of X and implementation of Y. Here's the playbook, and it'll guide us. It'll help us navigate and do that. Or we do this project, every year. Everyone knows it. And actually, what I'd like to do is treat it as BAU. But the fact that we haven't written it down and there's no procedures, we have to manage it as a project. So there's also a degree of using kind of the solution playbook. Ideally, if you kind of manage portfolios, to say, actually, can I push this out of project management and actually move it more into BAU execution, on the premise that I've codified the process, the controls, and that teams can follow it. Therefore, I've significantly reduced the level of execution risk, or the risk of drift with that process. Guys, that concludes sort of the talk on sort of process to playbook. And Tom is also, if you're kind of interested in the playbook approach, there's a white paper we wrote which sort of talks you through the kind of design principles and approaches that you need in order to build playbooks, which I think hopefully Tom's put in the chat. So yeah, please guys, just any questions that you might have. I'm just going to sort of trawl through, see if there's any questions, but please feel free to use the kind of questions. I've thought about putting all of that knowledge into its own playbook. Yes, Rab, I suppose I think I need to. I think like we did with the building world-class playbooks last year, I think there is a bit of really helping leaders understand the actual challenge. So I think we probably will do a new white paper that pulls all of this together. So yeah, I think it will be kind of a new topic of conversation for us, kind of a new publication that we work on to kind of bring it to life for everyone. Any other questions? I think one thing that got asked, having a few conversations with other people, we recognise the kind of jump from process to playbook is quite a leap of faith. And a lot of our engagements now, what we've done to kind of help clients build confidence with it is to prototype. And then, and we'll run kind of a day's workshop with a number of clients, or if you've got an idea for a process that you want to see what it would look like in a playbook, we run a number of kind of prototype sessions. And really that is to say, well, what would it look like? What would my process look like if I built it as a playbook? And it's good for us because it builds confidence that it's a good solution fit for you guys for kind of the problem, but also that kind of gives you that confidence as well that, yeah, you can see what a playbook would look like. So if that's of interest, please reach out to myself or the team if you'd like to explore the kind of playbook opportunity, sort of prototyping opportunity with us. Right, in terms of just close out then, look, there's a whole set of resources, and Tom will push out the slides so you have access to the slides, but there's a link to the kind of Pace Digital, which is Network Rails playbook that's publicly available. There's a link to our case study site if you want to look at more case studies. We launched the kind of Method Grid Academy. Just as a point of note for everyone, we launched the first e-learning course on Pace last week, thanks to Alice and the team. We'll push something out on LinkedIn that shows you how to access that and what the kind of user experience is, as how they can navigate between the playbook and e-learning. And as I mentioned, kind of playbook white paper will also be there. So just to conclude, next month we'll be looking at the kind of playbook investment, and it's really on us to kind of help you build that playbook investment case. So we'll be just going through, well, what are the benefits of doing it? Well, how can I make, how do I translate organizational drift and shelfware trap into tangible benefits that I can position? But also kind of will help you with a few of the tools and techniques and templates to help you do that. But also we're coming up, we're coming up to August. We'll be doing the next live event in October. This one is sort of more of kind of an invitation only event. And the reason we do this one is it's for clients, partners, and sort of senior leaders. Obviously, we'll share a bit more information about the kind of insights, best practice on sort of client projects. We'll also give you an update on the AI research into Leap. But also kind of October's event is always about helping us, well, what's the roadmap for the product, for the Method Grid platform? So to give you kind of a sort of help us kind of co-design what are the kind of key features and epics that we want to build. And obviously, as always with all kind of events, social opportunity, but also good networking opportunity to kind of meet leaders and people that are addressing the kind of organizational drift shelfware challenge. So I think the invitations will be going, or the hold the date invitation will be going out shortly. Just a few more on chats. No. Cool, lovely. Well, listen, as always with GRIDtalk, I just want to thank you for giving us an hour. Thanks very much for your time, and yeah, please register for the next one, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you all at GRIDtalk Live as well. And if you're interested, yeah, drop us a line. Lovely. Thank you very much. Have a lovely day.